welcome to the first Beetlejuice video of 2024. I'm excited to get back into this project. In this video, I really want to start planning out the second floor, but there's a few things I need to do before I can get to that. And of course, because it's a Beetlejuice project, it can't just be behaving, right? I have some foam board problems I need to fix. This is the first project I have completely built from foam board where I'm trying to make a house, like a full several story house. So I am definitely learning as I go, and I'm definitely learning that warp is a real pain in the butt. I try my best to keep warp as minimal as possible. I put everything I glue together under really heavy books, but sometimes it just happens, and it happens over weeks still after you think things are dry. So I'm gonna focus on that first, see if I can fix what's going on. Then I'm gonna focus on this piece right here, which is going to function as the ceiling for the first floor and the base on which I'm going to start building the second floor. So this is gonna be kind of a maintenance video, but it's one of those things that is very necessary when building a dollhouse. It just happens. You gotta... Dollhouses can sometimes throw fits, is what I'm gonna call it. They'll just come up with this new problem, this new crisis, and you have to fix it before you can move on to anything else. So let's get started on the problem management. That means you! I'm putting the camera pretty low here, so hopefully you can see what the problem is. There's about a ½ inch that is between this base column and the floor of this dollhouse. And one of the reasons is that part of the house is full of furniture and finishes, and so it's a lot heavier than this part that is just open, which is going to be the porch. So what I want to try to do is put some moisture on this part of the foam board and like underneath and around, because I like to keep the paper on my foam board, which is what causes the problem. Paper is always the problem. So I'm going to try and add some moisture to this foam board, put some 1, 2, 3 blocks, let it sit for a bit, and see if I can get it to come back down to minimize this space. So I'll measure it before I do that, and hopefully we can get something to work here. And I've also had this foam board come up at the edge. Even though I had this clamped for like a full week, it still ended up coming up. So instead of trying to fix this, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to put some clay underneath here to make it look like I meant for this to come up. It's doing it in all 4 corners, so it'll just kind of end up looking like an artistic choice, even though it was not my choice. It was the foam board's choice. Before starting this process, I decided to lay down a trash bag because I will be using moisture and water, and I just want to make sure it doesn't get in places that I don't want it to be. I used a small spritzer to go around the top of the foam board, and I also spritzed underneath, trying to get as much of the surface of this part of the foam board damp as possible. I didn't want any puddling water, so I used paper towel to get off any big spots. And then I'll use my 1, 2, 3 blocks to weight down the edges. While I'm waiting to see if this will work or not, I can work on another warp. As you can see, this piece I made for the first floor ceiling does not lay flat on top of my walls. However, I do have a different plan in mind to fix this warp. What I'm going to do is divide up this ceiling into 3 different pieces. Part of the reason it's not sitting flat is because it's one large piece dealing with one large warp. So if I can cut it into 3 different pieces, there's not as much tension in the large piece and it will lay a bit more flat. So first I'm taking a pencil and marking around all the upper edges of the walls. This is going to let me know where each room is and where my walls are on the underside of this piece. I taped it down first to make sure nothing would move during this process, and I know exactly where I need to cut. The pencil lines are just barely visible here, but it's going to help me know where I can cut these pieces apart so that they still will sit on top of my walls. The walls are what's holding these up, so I need to make sure at least a small bit of it is touching the bottom of my ceiling. I added these V marks so that once I cut it apart, I know exactly how it goes back together. I am going very slow with my craft knife, trying to make sure I'm cutting at a perpendicular angle to my desk, just to make sure there's no weird angles when I try to take the ceiling pieces apart. I know it's only 3 pieces, but the red registration marks that I put in really help me make sure that I'm not second guessing myself when I'm working on my tabletop and away from the project. Now I can test everything on the project itself, and I have my fingers crossed that I made all the cut marks in the right locations. Thankfully I did, and every single ceiling piece does rest on top of the wall. There is still a little bit of a warp that I'm dealing with, but at least it's on a smaller scale and not going across my entire project. Here you can see that it's just a small ledge that it's sitting on, but it's enough of a ledge to hold up my ceiling, so I'm happy with it. Checking back in on my porch warp, nothing has really changed at all. The measurement between the bottom of the porch and the top of the columns is still the same, so I'm moving on to plan B, which is going to be cutting grooves in the bottom of the foam board, allowing it a little bit more room to move. And I totally forgot Adam was under here. I probably should have removed him before I was spritzing all of that water around my project. I made sure all of the furniture was out first before doing this, and then I flipped it over so I could access the bottom of this foam board piece. You can see even more how warped it is around this area. The walls really help avoid the warp, so I think that's why it's so warped in this area, because there's just no walls on the edge. So I'm cutting a V-shaped groove into the bottom. You can see me pulling out just a little bit of the foam board. I'm only cutting through one layer of foam board because I still want this to be strong. I just want to give it a little bit more permission to be able to move. So here you can see it does have a little bit more of an allowance. So I'm going to try the process all over again. Before I spritz anything, I am going to put a few cuts into the porch. I didn't realize I was doing this off camera, so here is a reenactment. I just put a few cuts into the very surface of the paper. I'm not cutting as deep, and I'm not cutting V shapes, I'm just putting slits. And hopefully this will keep the top layer strong, but still allow it to bend a little bit more. Here you can see a better look at the V shapes from the side. I spritzed everything and I'm putting weights on it, so hopefully it will bend down and close some more of that gap. In a live stream I did last year, I talked about this lighting plan. The entire live stream was my thought process of how I planned all of this out. I will link it down below if you're interested, but now I need to prepare the ceiling for these wires that will eventually be installed into this area. Please ignore the blue Sharpie. That was me just sketching during the live stream, not really knowing where anything was going to be located. So everything I'm doing now is going to be with this red Sharpie. I'm first trying to locate where the sconces are going to be on the interior wall of the living room. These are going to have wires that go through the ceiling and drop down the wall. Once I have those in place, I can kind of do a connect the dot type thing where I'm connecting where these wires are going to touch. There are a few lights that are going to be on connectors, which means that they are going to have to disconnect from the main wires. One of them is going to be in this fireplace light because the whole fireplace disconnects from the dollhouse. So that is going to be the end of my line. I'm being very specific about where my lights are going and what that line looks like. It has to start in this gap in the wall, come out, hit each permanent light that's actually going to stay connected to the house, and then end at this connector where the fireplace is. Once I have that planned out, I can go ahead and cut grooves into the foam board that is going to allow my wires to run to each one of the lights. I am only cutting through the top layer of foam board, and then I'm using a pair of pliers to pull out the excess foam. This is going to give plenty of room for my wires to run, and then the second floor that's going to sit flat on top of the ceiling is going to conceal the wires and everything will sit flat, hopefully. I'm not going to be drilling the holes for the lights that drop down until I officially have the lights because I don't know how big the holes need to be. So for now, I'm just laying out some grooves so that I have my wire locations mapped out. This will also help me know what to purchase. Here's a good look at the groove going around the entire ceiling segment above the living room, and I did the same for the other two ceiling segments. And now we can go back to checking on this porch. As you can see, there's still quite a bit of space between the porch and the columns. However, I do feel like it is way less curved. So what I'm going to do is build up the porch columns to the porch so that it is supported, but I'm just gonna go with the warp as it is. And it wins. It has defeated me. But we're going to be a little bit more careful with the warp going forward, and I have some new ideas to try out. Back to those ceiling segments, it's time to attach them to my rooms. Many of the removable walls are attached by magnets, and so that's what I want to do with these ceiling pieces as well, so I can always access the inside of the rooms whenever I want to. The first thing I'm going to do is figure out where I want the magnets to be, and I have taped the ceiling down once again just to make sure that it doesn't move, because I want to put a blue line that marks on the ceiling segment and then also on the wall. This is going to allow me to line up my magnet and pin nail so that once the ceiling is placed on top, it's perfectly aligned. Pin nails are nails that go into a nail gun, and I have found them to be one of the most perfect things to be opposite a magnet. Magnets can have opposite poles, and so it becomes really hard to line them up, and it can make them very hard to get apart, which could tear up your project. So I have found putting pin nails into my project and having a magnet on the other side works really, really well. This is a set of 5 pin nails that I have cut off of the pin nail segment, and I cut into the top of my wall, just into the foam board. I added some glue, set the pin nails in there, and covered them with a piece of paper. This is going to keep them from popping out. I also did the same on the other side with the magnet. In this shot, you can see both of the pieces of paper that are covering the pin nails and the magnet sitting on top of each other. And now when the ceiling segment is sat on top of the walls, they pop into place perfectly. So once I had the living room done, it was time to work on the other rooms. This took a while, I won't lie. It looks kind of quick on camera, but it was a lot of cutting into the top of the walls, and some of them I had covered with wood glue, so they were tough walls to cut into. Once I was done, I had 3 ceiling segments that connected to the walls. However, I wanted to make sure they could still connect to each other. So I'm using a Sharpie to create an hourglass shape in the connecting areas of these pieces. I'm using a craft knife to cut out just the top layer of foam board, and this is going to reveal a little shape. Once I have both pieces cut out, I'm just adding a piece of paper, and I'm using a crayon, which I can rub flat over the top, which will give me the shape of the key. Once I have that done, I can cut it out of paper. This gives me a pattern, and then I will cut it out of mat board because mat board will be a lot stronger than paper. I added color codes and a little symbol so I know which way each key goes. And now I have a little piece that will connect my 2 ceiling segments together, and they won't be moving away from each other if there's any kind of movement around the dollhouse. I have 3 keys total with completely different colors, so I don't have to do a puzzle every time I want to put my ceiling together or take a piece out. And as you can see, it isn't going anywhere. It's magnetized and keyed down. Yes, I know. You're part of the show. Now that I have all the ceiling pieces figured out, and I know I can put them together again so that I know the correct shape, I can start working on the second floor. Yes, you're so helpful. So one of the things I noticed with my foam board, this is foam board I have not used, it is already warped. There is a curve to it. So I am going to do something a little bit different now that I'm starting the second floor. I've learned a lot from building the entire first floor. So now I can do things a little bit different and hopefully avoid some of the warp that I am still fighting on the first floor, or have lost the fight to on the first floor. So let's try it out. I see you. No. Because this foam board already had a warp, and it'll probably just warp more in the future, I am starting this process by scoring both sides of the foam board. I put 3 scores in the top part of the foam board, and then in different locations I'm putting a couple more scores on the bottom. I want them to be in different locations so I don't accidentally cut through. But here you can see it's a bit more floppy, it's not curving, and that's exactly what I want. Now I can reassemble my ceiling pieces because this is going to be the floor of the second floor rooms, and it has to be an exact match because it's going to sit just perfectly on top of the ceiling. I had prepped 2 pieces of big foam board but decided that would be wasteful, so I found a smaller piece that could continue this pattern, and I could save the other piece for later. This is going to be a double layered floor for strength for me to build the second floor walls on, so I do want it to be double foam board. I got tired of sitting on the floor, so I decided to do the second part of this on my desk. So I just used the piece that I previously cut and traced around it and cut it out again. So now that I have two pieces that are exactly the same, one of them has horizontal lines cut to reduce warp, and one of them has vertical lines cut to reduce warp. This means when I put them together, they won't have lines going the exact same way, which is what I want. Lines going in the opposite directions means it can lay flat, but still be strong once it's connected. Speaking of connecting things, I'm going to be using this seam tape, which was suggested to me by a video I saw from Queen City Minis. I will link that down below along with her channel. I had never considered using tape before, but I was so fed up with the warp that I was really excited to give this a try. So I will link what I purchased, and then I will also link what Queen City Minis suggested to me. This was incredibly sticky. In the listing it said it was temporary, but this stuff is not temporary. I think they're lying. It's not coming off. So what I did was cover the entire piece of foam board with the tape, and it's kind of nice because you can go at a slow pace. With spreading glue really thin, you had to go fast so it didn't start drying. However, I do feel like you have one shot at this, so I had Mr. Technology come hold the other side of the board to try and help me get this as lined up as possible, which is why you can't see very well.
Come here. Thank you.
Then I just made sure to press down all over the top of the board to make sure that the tape had contacted both the underside of this piece and the top of the other piece so that they were stuck together, hopefully forever. This is the flattest piece of joined foam board that I have ever created, and I'm unreasonably excited about it. It's one of those things only miniaturists truly understand. It's also incredibly strong, and I gotta say my brain initially was not thinking of tape as a very strong option for dollhouses. To me, tape seems more temporary and glue is much more permanent. But this is very permanent. I tried a sample piece and I basically tore up the foam board trying to get it apart. These two pieces are not coming apart. And if you think about it, it is glue. It's just glue that's applied to a thin piece of a mesh type material, and you just apply it in a different way. So I'm looking forward to trying this out more, especially because I like to leave the paper on my foam board because I feel like it makes the foam board that much stronger. So if I'm dealing with paper, the less moisture in my attachment techniques, the better. Huge thank you to Queen City Minis for sharing this technique. She has a ton of techniques on her channel, so definitely go and check her out. She's always coming up with something new that just, I am like, how did you think of that? I will be coming back to the wiring and the lighting later. Mr. Technology is currently deep in research, and I think we have found some magnetic connectors for the lights that we want to try. We'll see, but since there's magnets everywhere else, why not test it out? So for now, I'm going to continue forward with the second floor and start to plan out where the second floor walls are going to be. Yay, second floor! It's just the beginning! Honestly, this does feel like the start of a whole new project because it's just a brand new set of rooms and so many new things to build. I'm pulling out my Beetlejuice Dollhouse workbook. If you haven't seen this before, I have a Dollhouse workbook in my store. It's a PDF download, super easy to print out exactly what you need, and I spend most of my time in the sketchbook section because I like sketching out my ideas. It has some grid paper, so it's really easy to draw out floor plans. I'm turning over to the second floor plan, which is really exciting because previously I mainly worked on the first floor. So I am going to be adding a few pieces that did bump out during the process of building the first floor that I didn't plan on in the beginning. One of them is the bump out for the stove that's in the kitchen, and the other one is the bump out for the statue display in the dining room. One of the most important parts of the second floor is the staircase, making sure I get that lined up for the third floor, and then also the openings where the wires are going to go. Other than that, I can kind of move around the rooms, and I thought I was going to switch the study and the master bedroom, but I do switch it back. You'll see the whole process that I go through. During this part of building, you have to be a bit flexible with your floor plan and willing to move things down, because when you go from a 2D drawing into a 3D house, sometimes you come across surprises and some compromises that you just have to make. As I was transferring the floor plan to the piece of foam board, the first thing I wanted to do was to create the curve for the balcony. And then I also need to create this hallway that goes all the way over to the stairs. The stairs are going to be a little bit hidden on the second floor, but that makes sense because they are attic stairs. I also am having to deal with this opening that for some reason when I originally drew this did not draw on the second floor. So I'm having to work my walls around this because this is the main way for my wires to go from the base where they're all starting up through the house and connect with the upper floors. So once I got that figured out, I could move on to creating the rooms. There is going to be one rounded wall, which I'm going to have to cut into the foam board and force it to bend, but I do think that will be okay. After dealing with some of the biggest structural concerns and some of the outstanding features, I could start sketching in the rooms according to my plan. This did take a lot of time going back and forth, making some changes, and then of course checking with the third floor to make sure all of these plans were actually going to work once I add the third floor, because it's going to be very, very hard to change it in the future. And in a strange turn of events, I am actually going to be making a bathroom for this house, or as Delia calls it,
oh look, an indoor outhouse.
To hopefully get things up to Delia's standards, I'm going to be using some 3D prints from the store Elise Little Things. Elise did send me these items to try out for my Beetlejuice house, and she's also offered to make some very specific items for the Beetlejuice bathroom, and I'm really excited to see what she comes up with. These prints were so detailed and came in so many pieces, it really does feel like one of the most detailed miniature toilets that I've ever seen. I enjoyed putting it together, and I do look forward to painting it once I get to that point. I still have to kind of figure out what style bathroom Delia would want, because we don't see it after that scene in the movie. It has a moving lid and seat, which I think is just so cute. And I did put it on this foam board temporarily because it is back heavy, but once I install it into the dollhouse, that won't be a problem anymore. She also sent me her pedestal sink design, which was so easy to put together, and I really liked the little faucets because they were very detailed. This has kind of an Art Deco type feel to it, and I do think Delia would like it, but I may have to paint it in all black or maybe have black on the walls with the white standing out. I'm not quite sure, but we will get to that when we start working on the bathroom. Having some of the miniature furniture on hand is really helpful when planning out the floor plan, because you can actually visualize how these pieces are going to look in the room themselves. So I was really thankful to have these ready while I was planning everything out. So as I'm getting this all figured out, I'm realizing I don't have enough room in Charles and Delia's room. The stairs come up here, and then there's a hallway that goes here, and I originally was going to have the stairs that go up to the attic go this way and up. Well, this is Charles and Delia's room, and it is way too small. It's too small. So I think I'm gonna have the stairs go up and this way, and that's gonna take a chunk out of Charles' office, but Charles' office is really big, and it makes more sense because there's gonna be less furniture there. There's just gonna be his desk and some chairs and some shelves. So I'm gonna take a chunk out of Charles' office instead of Delia's room. I think Delia would approve. I think I have the stairs in the wrong place anyway. I think the stairs are originally supposed to go up the tower, but the tower is over here and way too small to have a set of stairs go up it. And again, that's one of those problems when it comes to working on a dollhouse versus a house that's really just sound stages in Hollywood, and none of that actually fits into the house structure correctly. So Lydia's bedroom is going to be really small too. Thankfully, their whole family are minimalists. There's not a lot of stuff that needs to go into these rooms, but I do at least need to fit a bed. So I'm gonna rework that now. I decided to take my own planning advice and pull out some furniture to test these rooms. So I got out some of the Addams Family furniture. I'm using Wednesday's bed to help me in Lydia's room, and I'm using Gomez and Morticia's bed to help me in Charles and Delia's room. And then of course I already have Charles' desk made, so that is going in Charles' study. This is where I started to see the imbalance of the sizes of the room, even though I switched the staircase. So I am going to switch Charles and Delia's bedroom back over to the front of the house. And I'm going to put Charles in the smallest room where he just needs a desk and chair. But Lydia's room is still looking way too small. I kept moving her bed around, trying to figure out the best way to even put it in the room. And then I decided to put it up onto my project to double check and see if I had any spaces that I could shuffle around to get a bit more space. And it turns out I did. So I'm really glad I did this step. Sometimes you need to look at it from all different perspectives, and especially on your project, to see what could be the best option. While I was planning on the foam board, I thought I had to have a walkway that went around this opening where the stairs are going, but actually the floor is supposed to go on top of the stairs, so really I do not need all of this space. So I can take this 3-inch walkway, move it over the top of the stairs, and then get a lot more space back into Lydia's bedroom. So I am going to do that now. I'm going to redraw this, taking into account that I can put flooring over the top of the stairs. And then I'm going to redraw the entrance to that hallway that goes to the attic stairs. Now I have a lot more space for Lydia's bedroom. I still don't know how I'm going to put the bed in there, but for now there's at least room to walk around the bed and maybe put in one other piece of furniture. Here you can see how much room I added just by checking how the stair is going to connect from the lower floor. So I'm really glad I did that before I started building. I also have part of my floor going over this opening where all the wires were going to go. So I'm going to have to cover that up so that I have a clear walkway underneath the arch, which leads to the back hallway. So I'm taking a bit of foam board cut exactly to size, and I'm going to push that in so that I have a place to add my flooring later. The last thing I want to do before I commit to this floor plan is look at my 3D model I built way in the beginning. This is going to help me visualize what the third floor is going to look like, make sure that my staircases and everything that's going underneath the third floor is going to connect. And it also lets me know which walls I'm starting to build will need windows. So then I just stood there and stared for a while, making sure that I did not miss anything. And now it's time to commit. We're gonna start building a few walls. I couldn't finish this video without building something, so I'm gathering all of my supplies. I had one piece of double thick foam board that I glued previously for the first floor, so I'm going to be using that, but the next time I make double thick foam board walls, I am going to try the tape method. I'm still going to be gluing on one solid wooden piece. These are my dowels that kind of help make sure that my foam board walls stay strong. I have an earlier video over my wall method, so you can always go back on my playlist and watch that. But as I'm starting here, I want to start with walls that are a 90-degree angle. This will just give me a great beginning, knowing that my walls are straight up and down because they have to be up against each other. Now I'm going to work on the stairs. The stairs are going to be really hard to get to as I build more and more walls, so building them first makes sense in my head. At first I just thought I was going to trace out my stairs that I have on the first floor, but instead I decided to follow this very detailed plan that you can find in this video, which I will link down below, but this is going to help me know that I have enough stairs to reach the length that I need. And it's also a good technique for making a set of stairs that has a platform in the center. So definitely check that video out if you're interested. So I'm going to begin adding these to my walls. I'm not going to be super detailed on each step of how the stairs are going in because these are permanent as opposed to the stairs in the video I showed you. I'm just going to be gluing them in as I go along. But now I have my two stair segments that are going against the wall. I made copies of each one. This way I have two pieces that I can span my steps across, and this one you can see has a little opening, and that's because I realized there's going to be this space underneath the stairs, and I thought it would be a cool little like Easter egg or a cool place that I could add in some more Beetlejuice hidden secrets underneath the stairs. I'm checking everything as I go along, and once I'm happy, I'm going to start gluing things in place. Starting with the lower run of stairs, I'm gluing the two pieces opposite of each other to make sure that everything will match up. Then I'm cutting down some cereal box material and I'm going to glue it on the front of the steps first. Then I'm going to cut pieces that have a little extra lip, and this is going to go on the actual stair step, and I'm going to do that all the way up this set of stairs. When I get to the top, I'm going to create the landing. It has a little bit of an overhang, but mostly sits perfectly flush with the edges of the foam board. Once that's complete, I can start the same exact process for the upper set of stairs, making sure that it sits flat on the landing I just created. So here's how it looks once I have both of these stair runs completed. I started to add some timber underneath because I do think this would be fun to paint brown so it looks like a really old attic stairway storage space, and put some surprises inside of there. Now that this is complete, I will feel much more comfortable adding in other walls because I know the staircase is not going anywhere and it is in the spot that I wanted it to be. Here's how it looks on top of the first floor. It is honestly so weird for me to see something sitting on top of the Beetlejuice house like this. It makes me want to go pick it up and like take it off because to me it looks like something foreign and it looks so plain from the front of the house. But if you go to the side, you can see it's an actual staircase and the beginning of a really cool staircase, I hope. So that's all I have for you today. I am so excited to finally have some walls on the second floor of the Beetlejuice house, and I'm even more excited that there are stairs. This set of stairs is very iconic when it comes to the Beetlejuice movie because they go up and down the stairs many times throughout the entire scene. So I'm hoping to keep it open on one side so you can see the stairs really easily. So I'm glad I got them built first so that I know they are in place and working with the rest of the floor plan. I want to say another big thank you to Queen City Minis for sharing this technique. I'm really excited to try using it on some wallpapering and flooring because this foam board is still flat and I want it to stay flat. And if this works, then wow, I guess is what I'm gonna say, because fighting warp has just been a downhill battle. This might get us back uphill a bit. It wasn't until just now that I realized I think I used that metaphor backwards. In my next video over this project, I plan to work on the bathroom, which will include the 3D printed bathroom items that were sent to me from Elise. And she's also making a few extra special things specifically for this project, so stay tuned for that. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful week. Leave a like if you feel like it. That does really help my videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Huge monitor here. Maybe I should put something on the monitor so it's not just a blank monitor in my background. Something in my eye. Ugh. I gotta know what update. And my post-it so I know what to say.
See me now?
No.
Can you see me now?
Kind of. So for now, I'm going to continue forward. Are you okay?